The original poster shared, "I hope this is okay to share here. The reason I'm posting is because of my daughter, who's been hurting in the aftermath of a recent performance. I'm sorry in advance for how long this turned out, but any advice from fellow aerialists would be greatly appreciated. My cousin Dana had her wedding 2 weeks ago, and she asked if my daughter could perform at her reception. My daughter Jane has practiced Silk's lyra for the past few years at a nearby circus studio, and she's also performed with Through the Studio at small gigs. She hopes to continue into adulthood and become a professional teacher, but this recent incident has shaken her confidence. She has a private Instagram to document her progress/performances, and I only post certain performances on my Facebook. Some of our relatives saw her performances through my socials, and they watched her perform at her studio's Christmas recital when we hosted Christmas at our home a few years back, something that surprised her when they visited early to see her. I love how they coordinated that, and Jane said it was her loudest cheering section to date. Dana was one of the relatives who came up early to see her Christmas recital, and she's always been super supportive. She asked me if Jane would be willing to perform at the reception, and I asked on her behalf. Jane was honored and excited when I did, and we already had a portable rig for her too. Dana got the idea from a YouTube video featuring an aerialist who performed at a wedding reception, and she showed us while requesting white silks and a white outfit. We scoped out the venue and purchased white silks along with a white costume that Dana approved of. And Jane was really excited throughout. Jane even worked on choreography to a song that Dana requested, and she put a lot of time into it. Dana insisted on paying her for the gig despite Jane not expecting to be paid, and she paid her a few hundred. However, Dana's had a change of heart. Jane received a standing ovation after her performance that surprised her, but we didn't know anything was wrong until Dana went on Facebook a few days later. Dana said she didn't approve of the outfit Jane wore, and that she specifically told her to not wear white. She also said my husband and I pressured her to have Jane perform, and that the performance gave off an unclassy vibe, lies that my husband and I couldn't believe. We sent Dana numerous costume links, and we purchased the one she liked. There was also nothing wrong with Jane's performance. Dana was one of the people cheering afterward. Jane received nothing but compliments afterward, but I'm disgusted that she had to see that post after all the work she put into it. The post also had comments disabled for what it's worth. I called Dana to confront her about the lies, but she didn't pick up numerous calls. I then called her parents, who, like us, had received messages about her post, and they said that Dana was wrong. They apologized on her behalf and said they were also disgusted. Dana's mom also said that Dana vented to her before making her post a few days after the reception. Dana told her she regretted asking Jane to perform, given the attention, compliments, and cheers she received for it. Her mom also said that she felt upstaged with Jane wearing white and having to hear how good she was. Dana's parents tried to call her after she made her post, but she didn't answer after their previous conversation ended, with her parents telling her she shouldn't be bitter because she specifically asked Jane to perform. Dana's parents reported the post along with us others, and we've told the truth to those who reached out along with a post to explain our side, stand up for Jane. Dana's parents also requested to talk to Jane on the phone to apologize for Dana's behavior, and my husband and I told Jane that Dana was wrong and that we'll be distancing ourselves from Dana permanently. Dana's parents were surprised at her behavior, and we were too, having seen her grow up. Granted, we only see extended family for Thanksgiving and Christmas because we live far, but other relatives were surprised too, as it seemed to come from left field. Maybe there's a side of Dana we'll never know from our limited holiday milestone interactions, but our focus is Jane. We've tried to cheer Jane up by offering to take her to dinner among other activities, but she's been hurting, which is why I'm here. Jane hasn't practiced at home or the studio since the reception, and I don't want to invade her space at her studio by telling anyone there, in case she doesn't want anyone to know. She asked me to return the white silks and costume after being so excited to receive them. She also said she's going to take an extended break from aerial to reconsider if she wants to continue. Aside from Ariel, she's taken a break from seeing non-Ariel friends too, choosing to pretty much keep to herself. We would appreciate any advice from fellow Arielists on how to lift her spirits. We remind her of how we're proud of her, along with the many compliments she received, but she's asked for space and to not talk about it. We're going to respect that and let time do its thing, but we'll consider any advice from other Arielists who can relate to the time and work she put in. Sorry for this being so long, but we appreciate anyone who read and takes the time to reply. Now for a few comments. One commenter said, "This is a rare story on this site where everyone, except the villain, does everything right. If this happened to an adult or even an older teenager, she would probably still be hurt, but be able to see that Dana is the one with the issue. But at 16, she's still forming her idea of herself. It sounds like she's taking this all on as a reflection of herself. I'm not someone who can be in the spotlight. My desire to perform hurts my family. I would really consider therapy. You could say all the right things to her, and I bet you have, but at 16, it's hard to hear your mom. Alternatively, and I'm sorry to say this, but is it possible that Dana's new husband gave Jane any inappropriate attention? That might explain why Dana is so upset when she presumably should have known exactly what to expect, although certainly wouldn't excuse it. If there were any opportunities for Jane and the new husband to be alone, I would really look into that also, because it would also explain why Jane hasn't practiced since the reception, even though the drama started a few days later. It is an extreme place to go, but I would just ask yourself if there was an opportunity for him to be inappropriate because she is withdrawing from her entire social life. When I was a teenager, driving up to the next city over helped me sometimes. Want to take a drive is still a question I ask myself when I feel stuck and hopeless. Go to the big aquarium and get cannolis at the outlet mall or something equally random. Maybe she'll open up or get out of her head, or maybe y'all will just have a nice day. Lots of love to you and your family. Jealousy is horrible. And Dana has just made herself look bad to anyone that came to the wedding. Also, just for reference, I have performed at multiple weddings and have always had a white costume. It suits the theme and is no way comparable to a wedding dress. I always see Arielists in white at weddings. Take comfort in the internet, and hopefully they can use it as a defense with Dana. If she wants to be that way, just post the receipts of how she asked her what to wear, etc. If she's willing to say that for a 16-year-old, or let it go, it'll pass, because I promise Dana will have some new crazy thing to do very soon. These types always do. The bride is petty, immature, and ridiculous first off. You must see that. Help her see it too if she doesn't already. When people show you who they are, listen. This is a painful but valuable lesson that your daughter is learning very early in her performance/teaching career. Just like any obstacle or difficulty in life standing between us and the things we desire, she has the choice to either let it beat her down or let it lift her up and make her more determined than ever. If she truly wants this, and does eventually go on to be an aerial coach and/or performer, she will face even more challenges. This is only serving to prepare her to face those. Making art is vulnerable. Sometimes people won't like it, but that tells you more about them than about you most of the time. Dana wanted her wedding to be all about her, which is fair to an extent, but obviously not to this extent. And I think she was happy to have a beautiful performance done for her, but forgot that people will congratulate the performer rather than the person who hired the performer. Given how extreme the response was, I would be a bit worried what someone else mentioned about the outside chance that Dana's husband said did something inappropriate, but my guess and hope is it's just a general attention thing. Regardless, it sounds like you and Dana's parents are handling things as best you can. Defending your daughter, but respecting her privacy and boundaries sounds exactly like the right thing to do. Well done, you. I would just continue to be there for your daughter in a low-pressure way and make sure she knows she has safe people to talk to whenever she's ready. Maybe see if there are any non-aerial activities any of her friends are down to do with her. Maybe something like rock climbing. which can feel less performance-oriented and attention-grabbing, but can still feel fun for an aerialist because there's a fair amount of strength crossover. Hopefully, she'll be comfortable with aerial again in the future, but I think just trying to help her not socially withdraw too much would be good for her well-being for now. So sorry she's going through this. She sounds like a great kid and a very talented aerialist. Now for the update. Before I get into what's happened since my last post, I want to thank everyone who took the time to comment. 2 pieces of advice really stood out, and I'll get to them shortly. Since my original post, Dana's Facebook post is gone. I don't know if she deleted it or enough people reported it for Facebook to remove it, but we're glad it's gone. She never apologized to us or Jane or even bothered to call, so our position on being permanently done with Dana stands. My husband and I made a post on my Facebook addressing the lies she spewed about our daughter, and we shared photo proof of Dana's texts, where she approved of Jane's white costume from links we sent, not to mention the song choice she sent us too. Better yet, Dana's mother reposted it on her account, which really surprised me. Dana's mother wrote that they loved Jane's act and that they disapproved of Dana's actions. My husband and I also made sure that Jane was okay with us addressing it on Facebook, and she said it was fine. Normally, I wouldn't use Facebook to address drama if aimed at me, but since this involves a grown adult attacking a minor, we felt the need to address it publicly because she disparaged her publicly, and Jane will remember whether we stood up for her or not years from now. I had a chance to speak with Dana's mother since my original post on the phone, and she spoke to Dana again since our last call. Dana reiterated how she regretted asking Jane to perform, but she harped on the standing ovation that bothered her the most. Dana told her that she expected Jane to get some polite applause, but that the overwhelming response really set her over the edge, because she expected the loudest cheers to be when she and her husband entered the reception. But that went to Jane instead. Dana and her husband also received a great reception when they entered the reception, but Jane's performance did too, and Dana didn't expect it. Heck, even Jane was surprised by it too. She never received a standing ovation from a solo act before, but Dana's mother believes that if Dana had asked someone to sing who received a similar reception, Dana's jealousy would have been all the same. Someone suggested seeing if Jane would be interested in speaking to a therapist, given how hurtful Dana's comments could be for a teen. And Jane said she's open to it so long as it isn't a counselor at school, because as of now, she doesn't want anyone at school or her studio to know about the incident, and she vaguely told the coach who helped her choreograph that it went fine. We will respect her privacy request, as it's her right to control the narrative. But in the same vein, I suggested therapy for Dana to Dana's mother, since her reaction might be a bigger insecurity, and she said she'd ask. The other thing someone suggested was the possibility of Dana's husband, or anyone, making an inappropriate comment to Jane during the reception that made her shut down and not want to see friends or practice days before Dana's post. My husband decided to ask her, and Jane said no when he did. If something happened, perhaps she'd be more comfortable telling a therapist with time. But on the bright side, she said she might want to try a different aerial studio because she doesn't want to answer questions about how it went or share a video at her home studio, so we will help her find somewhere new, as she asked. We hope she doesn't permanently leave her current studio because she has friends and coaches who are supportive, and she performs with that studio's troupe at festivals, gigs. But I personally understand the need to sometimes go somewhere where nobody knows you for a break, and we hope that that will help her. She hasn't said definitely yet, but if we does, we'll take her. She still wants an extended break from aerial in the meantime. But even if when she goes back, she said she may never want to perform again and would rather do it leisurely. One of the reasons she doesn't want to return to her home studio where she's a part of their troupe. She asked if we'd tell her troupe coach that she won't perform with them anymore if it comes to it. And if that's what she wants down the road, then we will. Hopefully, time heals this wound and helps her at least keep the friends she has there, but we can only hope. Now for some comments from the update. I'm so glad that you and the rest of the family are backing Jane up as much as possible. Hopefully, the support you show her now will eventually win out over Dana's hateful behavior. I also hope that Dana actually gets therapy, because going after a minor like that was beyond out of line. Maybe the suggestion coming from her own mom will make Dana reevaluate and make some changes. But regardless, it sounds like you guys are doing a great job parenting. I'm so sorry this happened. But the absolute best thing you can do is just keep showing Jane that you have her back. And it's her decision what she decides to do from here. We'd be happy to have her back if and when she decides to return to the Ariel community. I can see the positives in here that have happened since the last post. Thank you for updating. I have been thinking of you all. It does sound like Jane is still blaming herself, and that will need unlocking, as that mindset could spill over into other aspects of her life, stopping her from achieving her full potential. She needs to realize that this is bridezilla jealousy that got directed towards her, nothing to do with her. And if an aunt had received that attention, it too would have got squashed. Perhaps angle her to performing is fine, just never a family wedding again. And please ask her again in a few weeks if any inappropriate comments were made or done. Sometimes it can take a while to feel comfortable enough to say it out loud. It's not uncommon for boys to take 30 years before they say something. I feel like her coach needs to know that the performance was amazing, but to know that there was fallout afterward. They don't need to know exactly, but it will help explain the actions and ease the road back there for Jane. Please give her a big hug from me. Am I the idiot for cutting off my husband and his mother after they tried to baby trap me? I have been together with my husband James for 4 years. We are both child-free and do not intend to have kids in the future. When we first got married, we both told our family about how we didn't want to have kids and why. My family was fine with it, but his wasn't, especially my mother-in-law, who I'll call Mary for privacy. She's either passive-aggressive or just tells us we'll change our minds soon. For example, telling us I can't wait to be a grandma, despite us not wanting children. If we try to say otherwise, she just pretends not to hear us. I've been very uncomfortable with this, and I have told my husband multiple times, but he's just brushed it off by saying she'll accept it someday. However, it reached a limit. Recently, James was hosting a dinner party and invited his family as well as mine. While we were eating, my mother-in-law jokingly said, "You know, I've considered poking holes into you and James's condoms so I could be a grandma. It's so smart, and you'd never know," before laughing. I was horrified. After that, I excused myself and left the house. James followed after me, saying I was being dramatic and it was a joke. I told him that it wasn't a joke and what would happen if she actually did it. We kept arguing for a bit before he stormed back into the house and I drove off in my car. I've blocked my mother-in-law on all social media and deleted her number. The whole family is furious at me now, calling me sensitive and paranoid. Now for a few important comments. One commenter asked why one of us doesn't get fixed if we're adamant about not having kids. I responded that it's my husband who refuses to get a procedure done. I've already offered to get my tubes tied and other procedures, but he says he's not ready yet and doesn't want me to get surgery either until we're both ready. Another commenter noted that mother-in-law's comments, including the one about the condoms, have all been way over the line and squarely in the none of your business category. They suggested that my husband should have handled this with his mother quite a while ago. Now for the update. Thank you for all the support. After everything that happened, last night I had a talk with my husband about how I want him to take a deeper step into his commitment to being child-free. I've also told him, unless he gets a vasectomy or similar procedure, I will not be having intimacy with him. I want him to do this to prove he can stand up to his mother and that he is just as child-free as I am. But honestly, I've doubted that after posting the first story. My husband told me that still, he wasn't ready yet and that I was moving too fast. And by asking him to stand up to his mother, I was basically asking him to disrespect her for my sake. So then, I just asked him if he wanted kids or not. and to stop beating around the bush because I will divorce him and disappear like the wind if he doesn't. That finally got him to open his mouth, and he told me that he did want kids and was just secretly hoping for either an accident or me changing my mind, like how most of you guys in the comments predicted. But what really shocked me is that he told me he was already considering tampering with our birth control condoms before, but he just hadn't found it in him to do it yet. So now it makes sense why he only wanted to use condoms for our birth control. After that, I simply said that as of now, this marriage is over and I will be filing a divorce as fast as possible. And I made sure to tell him that whatever possible child I could have had would never be in his grasp to see him, especially my mother-in-law. He tried to protest, but I was firm on leaving. Honestly, he was pretty much planning to baby trap me. Nice try, but not here, honey. As of now, I'm currently staying at my sister's house. Soon I'm going to try and find a lawyer for a divorce. But I do know that I can't ever go back in that house with him in it, or my mother-in-law. This entire event has left me very shaken and worried. Now for a few more comments. One commenter asked why I got married if I didn't want children. I replied that he had told me before that he didn't want any either, and I thought we were both on the same page. Turns out I was reading a completely different book. Another commenter questioned using condoms as the only form of birth control. I explained that he refused to get any other forms of birth control. When I did offer to get a procedure done on me instead, he wanted me to wait until he was ready. I didn't want to hurt his feelings, so I waited on him pretty much. Finally, another commenter praised my decision, saying some people are just cancer on two legs, and we need to cut them out of our lives. Am I the idiot for ending my relationship after my boyfriend issued an ultimatum over intimacy? My boyfriend and I have been together for 2 years now. He is my first relationship and even my first kiss. We met during university, during activities, became friends, and then started dating. He is so polite and kind, and also really sweet and smart as well. We can talk about our common interests and hobbies for hours on end. Since I was a virgin in the relationship, he was not. We took it slow and only had intimacy when I was ready, which was about 8 months after we became a couple. After that, we had intimacy about once every 1 or 2 weeks, depending on if we found the time during our studies and if we were exhausted. Sometimes during exam time, we had it once a month or every 5 weeks. But slowly, he started to initiate more and more. At first, I didn't mind and loved the attention he was giving me. I felt attractive and beautiful, which helped my body image issues a lot. Soon, it turned into him asking for it every single day, sometimes twice a day during weekends, or if we have a slow day with little work and studies. A month ago, we went on a vacation together, and he basically jumped on me as soon as we got into our hotel room. We barely got to do anything as he wanted to have intimacy 2, if not 3 times a day. I came back so exhausted from the vacation. I even started saying no to him eating me out, or role play, or switching in position, just to get it over with sooner. At this point, intimacy does nothing for me anymore. The mere action and physical stimulation feel enjoyable, yes, but just intimacy without anything else just isn't worth the time or effort for me. I need a story and emotion with it, lots of dirty talk and role-playing, some hot situations. I know that takes time and effort to prepare, but it gets me going wildly. But even if I could have that every day, I wouldn't want it. It's literally physically too exhausting. Also, I feel like too much intimacy kinda destroys the magic. I know that he takes a lot emotionally and sexually out of intimacy. It's making him feel loved and desired, and I don't want to take it from him. But I actually caught myself not doing any makeup anymore and not wearing tight or short clothing, but baggy ones instead to maybe deter him from wanting intimacy so much. I spent a lot of time reading through everyone's replies and looking inwards about how I feel. I gathered my thoughts and spent a few days making a list of what I wanted to say when we have the big conversation. On a weekend when we had planned to spend the day together, I sat him down and told him the following points. I love him to the moon and back, and want to show him that I love him. Make him feel desired, loved, and appreciated. But having so much intimacy with such frequency is physically exhausting to me. which causes me to avoid intimacy and even intimacy acts I enjoy because I don't have enough energy and motivation to do it. This also causes me to orgasm not as often anymore. I also need time to physically recover before it may even start to become painful. I feel like intimacy has become the single defining aspect of our relationship, and many other parts like doing activities together, romantic dates, just talking and cuddling have taken a back seat. I also feel exhausted emotionally and underappreciated from giving as much as I can, which I gladly do for the people I love, while little comes back from the other side of the relationship. I then proceeded to explain the things I like during intimacy and what makes me go wild, hoping to show him that I still want to have intimacy with him. I also made a few more compliments just to keep the vibe positive, and because I meant it. He reacted pretty well, all things considered. He listened and let me finish, but asked for a little time to think about it. Obviously, I gladly agreed. We spent the rest of the day together without him initiating once. At the end of the day, he said that he wants me to enjoy intimacy just as much as he does and that he loves me. I was really hopeful for the next week and a half. We spent our time together like usual, and he asked for intimacy about half as often as before our talk. We even had days without intimacy at all. He also started to ask, "Do you want to have intimacy with me?" instead of physically initiating like he did before, like touching me somewhere, hugging me from behind, and similar things. He also stopped asking for pictures of me, and when he did, it were just selfies. I was so happy that I even took the initiative once, and he seemingly loved it when I asked for intimacy. Then one day, he sat me down with a stern look and said that he hated what this relationship has turned into. To him, it feels like we are now just roommates or platonic friends instead of lovers. He told me that the one time I initiated after he was overjoyed to finally fuck me again, his heart was broken because I suddenly wasn't as submissive as usual. I asked to be eaten out and was on top with some more dominant dirty talk, and that all of that is not what he signed up for. He doesn't want to walk on eggshells waiting for when I am finally in the mood, but have what he deserves in the relationship. Basically, he gave me an ultimatum. Either we return to how it was before the talk starting right now, or he leaves me. Guess who doesn't have a boyfriend anymore? I spent the last few days bawling my eyes out and eating lots of ice cream and watching some shows. What he said hurt me a lot, and I do not love him anymore. But still, the feeling of loss and sadness is all too real. He was my first relationship, and for the past 2 years, he was my entire world. Now I have to gather up the broken shards he left behind. Now for a few important comments. One commenter asked about her libido and emotional connection. She said, "I have a pretty high libido as well, and I love good, sensual intimacy, and I want it quite often, as I can go multiple times a week. But it was so often that we basically didn't do anything else besides it, and he was emotionally checked out when the possibility of intimacy wasn't on the table. It was so much that I was physically uncomfortable. Not to mention his really bad behavior once I told him I wanted a break sometimes." Another commenter suggested intimacy incompatibility. She responded, "I hate that people throw around this sexual incompatibility argument, because if he said he wanted someone, he can frick at least 2 a day anyway. He likes, and I can't and don't want to do that. That would be one thing. But he shouted at me, demanded we do it how he likes it, and that I apologize for ruining everything by voicing my concerns for my well-being. He also said that he deserves to just take everything he wants from me. We are not together anymore. I cut him off after his scary tantrum. Thank you for your empathy and for the added context. I know that my update gave more information, but that's also because I didn't see a lot of the stuff he did to me and didn't do for me after that tantrum. Until that point, I wanted to give everything to him because I was head over heels for him until he showed me that he didn't feel that way back. I get it. I like intimacy just as much as the next gal. It's just that I have a pretty broad spectrum of frequency. I would be okay with depending on what my partner feels like. Intimacy once a week or 2 weeks? Totally fine, as long as the other intimacy is fulfilled. Intimacy every other day? Great as well, as long as it's an equal relationship and we both get what we want. and non-sexual intimacy isn't pushed to the side, which sadly happened to me. In the end, I not only felt really sore and exhausted, but also used and reduced to my body. If we broke up because of intimacy incompatibility, that would still hurt, but we could part ways amicably. This way, he just hurt me for no reason. I get that intimacy incompatibility can be a huge deal breaker for people, but firstly, it's not like we suddenly were not having any intimacy anymore. In those 10 days between our two conversations, we still had intimacy about 5 to 6 times, plus making out, plus some other intimacy stuff besides full-on PIV. Also, it's the way he treated me. He shouted at me, demanded we return to normal by having intimacy as often as he wants again, no matter my feelings and with me being submissive. He also demanded an apology and an apology session. So much could be inferred. But before all that, for the last weeks and months, he left me emotionally starved. He only looked out for his intimacy gratification while I had to cherish the few little drops of romance, friendship, and companionship. When it didn't involve intimacy or could lead to intimacy, he was kind of emotionally distant. Cute dates, cuddling intimacy without sexuality, and hobbies together were few and far in between. I don't fault him for not wanting intimacy. I fault him for how he treated me and how little he was able to compromise.